Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. Brian and Michael Voltaggio are launching a Whiskey Wagyu Wednesday special at Voltaggio Brothers Steakhouse at MGM National Harbor in Oxon Hill, Maryland, in a special partnership with Catoctin Creek Whiskey in Virginia. I spoke to the Voltaggio brothers about their journey in the restaurant industry before competing against each other on TV's Top Chef, as well as what it was like growing up in Frederick, Maryland, where we even shared a beloved high school football coach. Thanks so much for joining us, both of you.
It's great to be here, man. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. We're happy to be here.
All right. Now, before we get back up here to talk our stomping grounds of Frederick, let's hit the main WTOP listening area, which is DC. Tell us what new we have at the Voltaggio Brothers Steakhouse at MGM National Harbor. That's the big location down there. I heard you guys just launched a Whiskey and Wagyu Wednesday special.
We just recently partnered with Catoctin Creek. We went out there and we hand selected a barrel, and both Michael and I, we obviously love working with ingredients and people within our region. And they're an incredible artist and producer of some amazing whiskey. So what we did there is we hand selected a barrel now that's going to be bottled exclusively for us. And as people know, whiskey is individually aged in barrels, and so the cool thing is you get to go out and sort of taste through and select your own. And so we landed on one particular one that's going to be, it's barrel number 34, and that's going to be part of a Whiskey Wagyu Wednesdays. And so what we're doing is we're pairing cocktails and also even, just the spirit straight with a beautiful cut of Wagyu beef that's out of Pennsylvania. So it is a promotion we're running on Wednesdays, but it's also going to lead up to where Michael and I, we're going to do a dinner together as we get closer to launching the barrel on property. So that's TBD on dates, but it's going to be coming out and announced soon. We're going to be doing a menu where we're going to be there that night exclusively with our guests.
Awesome. So you got the steak coming from Pennsylvania, you got the whiskey coming from Virginia, and it's going to come together at
and cooked by a couple of Maryland guys.
Exactly. So, we're hitting the whole DMV, or I guess DMVP.
Exactly.
Awesome. And remind listeners where Catoctin Creek is. It's like Percival, I think.
Yeah, it's Percival, Virginia.
Right.
So it's right in our backyard. Not far, from not only Frederick, where we all are from, but also the steakhouse in particular.
Awesome. Sounds good. All right. And then remind us, I guess, in terms of the Frederick locations, WTOP, it's 103.5 in DC, but we're 103.9 in Frederick. Yeah, 103.9 up here.
Recently, we rebranded Volt to Thatcher and Rye, and it was, during the pandemic. I know we talked, before that.
We literally talked in March of 2020,
I know,
right? As this was happening.
Before it all closed. And then, as far as projects, coming along too, both Michael and I, we have a brand new project we're working on together right now, which is going to be in Chicago. So it takes us a little bit outside the listing area, but it's our newest and latest and greatest. And we're going to be launching that in the first quarter of next year.
Awesome. And I believe when we spoke last, it was like right before everything really shut down. I know you were like hopeful, and there was like, we were still talking like carry out menus and all that stuff. It's crazy how much has changed in the last 2 years, but
yeah.
Just remind us, so Volt was the big thing. It's now Thatcher and Rye. That's on Market Street. And then Family Meal on East Street changed to Born and Raised. And then is it now Showroom? Is that what it's called now?
Yeah. I consult on a menu there. I'm not, partner, and I'm still certainly affiliated. But we're consulting on a menu, and that's went through some new ownership and new changes, but it's still great little restaurant on East Street.
So I think the biggest thing that happened, that came out of those 2 years was just having the time to sort of push the reset button and take a look at everything that we were doing, I'll use the word globally, I guess, because,
right.
Brian and I saw this as an opportunity where we're all going to be held accountable for that time. And we got to spend a lot of physical time together to sort of hammer down and figure out what projects make sense, what projects might not necessarily be working for us currently, and how, when we were asked, what did you do with those couple years? We can sort of say that, we didn't take time off. We took time to reset and focus on things that we were passionate about, including family. And I think that that's something that everyone sort of had a chance to take a step back and do. and now Brian and I are sort of full stride moving forward. There's this need to sort of not reinvent yourself every year, but reintroduce yourself to your sort of customer base. And so Brian and I, we never just take a step back and rest on what we've accomplished. We look to figure out what we can accomplish more next. And I think now more importantly than ever, together.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it was a big time for family and you guys, I don't envy you at all in the being restaurant business, making tough decisions. It's probably the last 2 years has probably been the most crazy time for that industry.
Yeah, no, it has been. But, the beauty about how we're doing this now, I mean, Michael and I working together, not only are we brothers, we're also business partners, and we're able to, accomplish more and be, more present in the restaurants that we do have, whereas, there's a time where I think we both felt a little bit stretched, a little too thin. And, even though we have a couple of new projects on board, it's just the right amount, right amount of presence, right amount of us being involved in these day to day. And that's something we certainly learned, over the pandemic, because things slowed down a little bit. Right. And so you start thinking about, what it really means to be in these restaurants, to be there for your guests. And now we can be more active in the experience.
Yeah. How have the guests, you mentioned trying to reintroduce yourself and, carry over the same customer base and stuff like that. How have they adapted and come along with you? Was there any initial confusion with the name changes, or can we use our same gift cards, or what, you know what I mean? Like there's probably like the transition.
Yeah. In thinking back, and just looking at let's just look at Volt and Thatcher Rye, and that conceptual change was because we realized that during the pandemic, people at the time weren't looking for a lengthy, like 3-hour dining experience anymore with multi-course menus. And, let's talk about the current climate right now, and also high check average, right? So, even though we always want to try to command the best, value, in it, we feel like that's what we're doing now. We're creating more of an everyday experience across the board. And even our new projects we're working on right now, we're creating fun, experiential spaces that are, inviting and cool menus and great places you want to go and be seen, but also, feel like you can go on a any day of the week, and it gives us more access to our guests,
I think for the first time in our industry, and this is the most important part probably, is that we're taking direction from our guests now. And so the template that was sort of dictating how everyone does business was coming from the guides, or coming from the reviews, or coming from, people that are going to come eat there once. And I think now as an industry, we're starting to see entirely a lot of places are shifting gears and focusing on the guests. And I think that's what's making this time the most exciting time, I think, in food and beverage and hospitality is the guests are really in control right now. And that's the part that I'm excited about, because they're the ones that you could see multiple times in the restaurants. And those are the ones that we want to focus on, as opposed to, I mean, obviously media is super important in the support of that and everything, but in some cases, people were in their restaurants following trends that were being outlined through various different outlets, as opposed to just asking their guests, what do you want and expect from this experience, and how can we match that and exceed that. And I think it's becoming a lot more guest driven, and I think that's the most exciting part about what we're going through right now.
Yeah, you're listening to the people now. It's the whole thing is shifted, but that's really cool. All right, well, let's hit a little. I would love to, we have both brothers on. It's a real treat, and here in I grew up in Frederick, Maryland, where I grew up. I guess, but you guys were in the 70s. So let's hit the hometown hero angle here. What when you guys were growing up, was food always like a big deal, around the house, the two of you? And I'm sure you run into sports practice and stuff. What was like dinner always a sacred time?
Yeah. I mean, dinner was always like, our mother made it a priority to, like, the ritual of having dinner was always very important. And so that was the time to gather around the table, have, sometimes a casserole or mom food, just really good mom food. But for me, the memory was more about the ritual. And then as everyone, I mean, Brian and I, came from a very much a working class family. And so everyone was busy. Everyone was at work. Everyone had a lot of things to do. And so I think where food or us creating food became important. And this is where it all started for us. Brian and I first started working together at the Holiday Inn in Frederick by the Francis Scott Key Mall. I was actually a busboy, and Brian was in the kitchen. And then I remember it was a Saturday. Brian and the other sous chef said to me, "Hey, come to work dressed like a chef tomorrow, and you can work in the kitchen." And so I showed up, but him and the other sous chef were off, and the only person that was there was the executive chef, who they had not informed that I would be working in the kitchen that day. And they set me up for failure. But
No,
it was a good introduction. It was a good
introduction.
It was a good hazing into the kitchen.
Did you guys pick on each other? Because have you ever heard of Liberty Road Seafood and Steak down on 26?
Yep.
Yeah. That's what my brother and I have a twin. We worked over there, and I was the waiter, and he was the busboy. I'd say, "Eat your chicken tenders, busboy." We ragged on each other's, So
Right.
did you guys rag on, "Oh, I'm in the kitchen" versus "I'm a busboy"?
It hasn't stopped. I mean, now, obviously we're older and mature and all of that stuff. But yeah, no, back in the day, of course. Now the little rib shots here and there.
Well, remind us, fill in the gap between, the early Holiday Inn and FSK Mall days to then go on. And I know, at least Brian, when we spoke, you went to Culinary Institute of America and then went to New York City, right?
Yeah, there's a time where both Michael and I were in Frederick together. We're working, and at that time it was two different locations. Michael was working at a prestigious country club. I think I was still working at the Holiday Inn or of some sort. And at that time, I think that's when we knew, like, at this point, we're going to turn this into a career. Michael got accepted to a pretty amazing apprenticeship program down at the Greenbrier, White Sulphur Springs, West Virginia. So he went down there. And then I went to Culinary Institute of America in New York. So that's where we kind of separated when it came to, spent 2 or so years apart. But there's a time when I was on my internship that Michael moved up, to New York, and he worked for Larry Forgione at Coach House and helped open that restaurant at the time. I was working at Oriole in New York, and after that, shortly after, when he finished up and I finished up, we kind of went our separate ways and ended up on different coasts, for a while, cooking, and creating restaurants and working for some pretty amazing people. Michael worked for Jose Andres. I worked for Charlie Palmer for a long time. And then, after that, we started working together. We started opening restaurants together. So, there's been a lot has transpired as a culmination of like 50 some years of culinary experience between the two of us. We've been doing it for a while now. So it's been an amazing journey for sure.
Awesome. And then, of course, the rest of the world got to know you.
And then Michael kicked my ass on Top Chef. Yeah,
that's what I was about to get into. Top Chef Brian, and is he younger bro too? So you lost to younger bro in the finals of
I sure did.
Season 6.
You know what? It came down to the two of us at the end. So one Voltaggio at least got to take it home, right?
Brian's being humble, though. What he's not saying is that he has the most wins in the history of that show, because he's done it 3 seasons and he has never been sent home. So Brian is the winningest Top Chef contestant, as far as I know, in the history of that entire franchise.
Wow. So yeah, you get to hold that record, and then Michael gets to have the championship
win.
Yeah. So Michael, what was it like? You just bragged on your brother, but what was it like for you to actually win?
Yeah, I mean, it was cool because, like I said, we started at the Holiday Inn in Frederick, and like the fact that we, that foundation was something that we built whatever this is off of it. At the end of the day, it was like, we weren't model students at Thomas Johnson High School. We were the ones that were sort of getting in trouble. I mean, I played football on the football team, and that's when my GPA stayed where it needed to stay. But outside of that, the grades weren't quite where they needed to be. And so for us, it was like we found a creative outlet that we could turn into a career. And I think that we both took that work ethic and that drive and desire and turned it into something, not just for us, but for the city of Frederick. I mean, Brian has very much maintained a footprint in that city, and it's been very important to him to always have a footprint in that city, down to the fact that he lives there. And I think that that's, Brian living on a farm in Urbana, 20 minutes away from where we grew up, and then us having the steakhouse with MGM, it was kind of a homecoming full circle. And for us to be able to have partners like MGM that wanted to continue that story on our behalf and as our partners, was the hugest compliment I think that we could have ever gotten. And that part of it, the fact that the community, I mean, that steakhouse has been there for over what, 5 years now, Brian?
So we're going on 7 years, or 6.5 years.
Or 5+, yeah, 5+, yeah. And so the fact that and that restaurant stays busy, and the fact that we have that support in the DMV area for us is huge. I mean, I still live in California, but I'm very much back and forth, and Brian is as well. And so the fact that we can sort of be these punk kids, you know, from Frederick who were getting in trouble to doing something a bit more positive, I think has been, you know, huge for us. And so, you know, now it's about mentoring. You know, we love to sort of take talent that's in similar situations to what we were in, and sort of mentoring them through the same process. And maybe there's a lot more to come out of that area. I mean, if you look at the restaurant scene in DC alone, it's one of the most exciting food cities in the entire country right now. And I think that, you know, if somebody said that 15 years ago, Washington, D.C. is going to be, you know, a food hub and a place, a destination dining city. I mean, people like Jose Andres and a lot of the ones that have been in that city doing it for years and years. It's such an exciting time to be in the DMV, not to mention the wine that's growing in the region now. And obviously we're like Brian said, we have this barrel of whiskey. There's so much happening in such a sort of 50-mile radius. That's so exciting.
Oh yeah, that's so cool. I love what you were saying about that. Just these punk kids at TJ went on to do, to do it. Real quick. I had no idea that, Michael, that you played a little ball at TJ. Who was the coach? Was it Ben Wright or was it before Ben Wright?
Coach Wright was my coach.
Oh my God, I had him my senior year. He came over to Linganore with Rick Connor, Connor's first year at Linganore. But yeah, rest in peace, Coach Wright.
Yeah, I was actually the place kicker on the team.
Really?
I was a wide receiver at Walkersville High School my freshman year, and then I started kicking and found that was you know, what I should have been doing at the time. But also, I think it was, not to say the least athletic, but like I definitely had not as demanding of a practice schedule as everyone else, because I was actually pretty good at it.
Right.
But Coach Wright used to make me, because my grades and stuff were not where they should be. Like I remember coming in, and for like gym period, he would just have me wear a weight vest and run up and down the stairs for the entire class. And I was just like, man, this is tough. But like again, those life lessons and that work ethic that came out of it, like our team, every year that I played for TJ, we went to the playoffs.
Yeah. And just talk Coach Wright. I mean, rest in peace. What a soul. I mean, he was such a good man. So he died a couple years ago, but yeah, he
was incredible. And just, again, like the work ethic that he instilled upon, you know, the athletes, but not just the athletes, but the students in the school. I mean, everyone loved Coach Wright because he was almost just a symbol of just pride within the school and work ethic and just hard work. I mean, he was demanding, but he was just cool. You know, he had this swagger about him that everyone sort of gravitated towards.
I loved him so much. Rick Connor brought him over. Rick came over from Urbana, where you are, Brian. He went to Coach Crothers in Urbana. He went over and started Linganore, and he was like, I need to bring in these, you know, legends. So I'm going to bring Coach Wright over. And he like brought his little all-star squad. That first year was my senior year. Funny small world. So wait, did you go watching Michael's games, Brian?
Yeah, of course. I watched them.
Yeah, right. You didn't show up and watch the games. What are you talking about?
No, but I mean, I was 2 years ahead of them though too. So by the time I was already out in the working world at that point.
Yeah, exactly.
What Brian used to do is show up to my lunchroom after he graduated in full snowboarding clothes, and be like, let's go, we're going snowboarding. He had already left school, and then he would be like, come on, we're going snowboarding. I'm like, Brian, I got like 3 more classes left for the rest of the day. He's like, no, you don't. And I would just leave and go snowboarding with him. We'd head up to Ski Liberty, and that would be our day.
Yeah, so Mom's in the listening area. So Mom, sorry about that.
Sorry, Mom. Mrs. Voltaggio, sorry. Well, we've sidetracked thoroughly here, but let's bring it back around to the, I guess, final seconds. You've been really generous with your time, both you guys. I didn't even know we would go this long, but I appreciate it. But real quick, I want each of you to say, brag on the other one, like embarrass them with kindness, nothing bad, but nice. Like, you know, what does the other one do the best in the kitchen? You know, what do they each bring to the table? So I guess, Brian, you know.
Yeah, I can go first. So Michael is a creative genius when it comes to putting together flavor profiles and food, and just like a visionary when it comes to creating a dish. You know, I'm fortunate to work along somebody who has just an inspiring way of just thinking about food and where it comes from, and a complete student when it comes to it. Whenever he's working on something, he immerses himself into almost like an unhealthy aspect of like, we'll continue to work on something until it is done, until it's perfect, until he's happy about it. And that's where that work ethic comes in.
All right, now that's the Coach Wright work ethic there. All right, so Michael, now with kindness, embarrass Brian.
Of course.
What he
I
does.
mean, Brian is a technically proficient, like almost he cooks with this professorial approach. I mean, Brian could teach cooking. That's how good he is. So whether it's Brian has that brain where you can read instructions and figure out how to do something instantly, and Brian doesn't even really read the instructions, down to the fact that he's now becoming a pilot. He, I believe, is one test away from becoming an actual pilot. He's been flying planes, and this is something that, you know, Brian, when he puts his mind to something, he can do it. And I remember the first time, I think he was 16 years old, he took me up in a plane with him and was like, I'm going to fly one day. And now he's doing it. And I think that, you know, that's a metaphor, I think, for Brian's entire life and his career. And I just think it's such a huge accomplishment, not what he's done just in culinary arts, but as a father and just as a chef in general, and as a human being. I mean, Brian is a machine. And everyone that has worked and been around Brian in a professional or personal environment will know that he does not rest.
Wow, I did not know you were becoming a pilot. I had no idea. He's like, oh, the winningest record in Top Chef history. That's not enough. I now want to conquer the sky. Sky's the limit for the Voltaggio Brothers. Hey, thank you so much for doing this. This is a blast catching up. I wanted to tell our listeners what you've been up to, and so thank you so much.
Appreciate it. All love for the DMV, guys. Love you guys.
See you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate the time.
If you enjoyed that conversation, check out my previous chat with Brian Voltaggio from March 2020, right as the pandemic hit, for a fascinating time capsule of a dire time in the restaurant industry. Just know that Volt is now called Thatcher and Rye, and the family meal is now called Showroom.
Brian Voltaggio,
who is competing Thursdays on Bravo on Top Chef All-Stars LA. Of course, a local guy here in Frederick, Maryland. So we were just joking before we got on here that we are literally blocks from each other, because I live in Frederick too, but calling.
Yes,
we're taking the time
we're
to
staying
join.
at home. Yeah, for sure. So yeah, no, life has definitely changed around, you know, everywhere. You know, obviously, you know, our two restaurants, Volt and Family Meal in Frederick. Volt is temporarily closed currently right now, obviously due to COVID-19. And then Family Meal, though, we have a to-go operation that we are continuing to operate. So if you get a chance and you get out, since you're only over on Bent Street, come swing over east. You pick up some food.
Now, what did before we go into the show, just break down that decision. Why did you guys decide to close Volt but leave Family Meal?
Yeah, so Volt, what we did was we actually did a pop-up wine shop for a few days, and just, you know, offered some of our inventory, some of our harder to get wines that people don't normally see in retail. And we did that to just try to generate some cash flow for payroll and for our team. But Volt is not, you know, a typical experience that you would have, you know, on the road or to go. That's more of a in the restaurant experience, you know, for our diners. And so we just decided it would make more sense to do that and channel our efforts, you know, to our other restaurant, which is Family Meal, which is right in downtown Frederick as well. And there we're doing a to-go operation 4 to 8 daily, with even now cocktails to go, which is a new thing, despite the, you know, obviously the concerns of what's going on around there. We, you know, at least the state allowed us to do some things to be a little bit more nimble and try to, you know, generate some income for our team.
I mean, how much has it affected business so far? Do you find people still ordering takeout? Or?
Yeah, no. I think the general consensus is across, you know, everyone who's trying to do this effort, you're seeing 20% of your typical revenue, which is exactly what we're seeing over at one of our restaurants at Family Meal. You know, and unfortunately, it's just, you know, what we need to do to try to keep some people employed, and, you know, obviously also, you know, for the community, offer, you know, and people are cooped up. You know, they want to have, you know, there's so many recipes they could probably think of to cook out of their pantry, and so at least there's a change of pace. You know, we're trying to keep some normalcy in our lives, even though we're respecting obviously the dangers of, you know, of what's around us, and respecting obviously the virus, and making sure that everybody is staying safe.
For sure. Crazy times. All right. Well, let's talk. The reason we're here on the call is Top Chef All Stars LA, Thursdays on Bravo.
Right.
Remind our listeners before we get to this year's season. Remind us the first time you were on. I think it was back on season 6 of Top Chef, and you lost to your brother Michael in the back in 2009. Memories of that?
I know everybody likes to remind me of that. It's fantastic.
Just like I'm trying to stoke the brother rivalry a little bit.
Yeah, right. The first time I competed was in Las Vegas. I lost to Michael. It was more than 10 years ago at this point. It was just after I opened my first restaurant, Volt. Decided to go into the show. After that, I also went back. I competed on Top Chef Masters. It was an opportunity to go back and compete again. I mean, that's what I really love about Top Chef is the competition. And there, I also was a runner-up. So I've been in second place twice, roughly. And so it was time to go back for a third time and see if I can get a win this time.
Yeah, maybe third time's a charm. It's always a bridesmaid, never a bride. Second place, and now maybe this will be the first place tonight.
We'll see. Yeah.
All right. So remind us, explain the premise of this season. It's called Top Chef All Stars LA. What makes this season different? How'd they round up the contestants?
Yeah, I mean, this season is everyone who has made it really far in a competition. And it spans not every single season, but the majority of the last 16 seasons. There's returning chefs, whether they were a runner-up in their season or made it to the finale. Some of them at least passed Restaurant Wars. Which is a common challenge that you find in most seasons of Top Chef, and that's kind of like the benchmark. You get past Restaurant Wars, and you've kind of gone through the majority of the competition, and so everyone on this season has made it, at least to that point, and all very, very talented people. There's actually 3 of us from season 6 in Las Vegas. There's Kevin Gillespie, Jen Carroll, and myself. Which a lot of people reference that season because that was also a very, really tough competitive season. I mean, they've all been great and very, competitive, but I mean, I think that season stood out a lot. And so having 3 contestants back from that one is going to be challenging. Kevin's a great cook and also a good friend. That's the other part too, is that a lot of these chefs, I know majority of them, we're all colleagues and friends now. And so, much like the first season of Top Chef I ever did when I was competing against my sibling, those friendships and everything are kind of set aside, for the moment while we're competing during the challenges, and yet, high fives afterwards. So it's a very unique situation going back and competing, with people.
And aren't there some DC ties to some of the other ones too? Like Eric and Jennifer also have DC ties.
Eric
right?
Ajupong, also is on there. He came through and he did a stage at Volt at one point, a while back. So we knew each other before this. I actually went to Kentucky in his season. It was a part of a table that he served. That he was a chef testant during that time. He was one of the chefs competing, and actually went back for a mentor challenge. So I know a lot of these chefs, in various ways. Obviously Jen Carroll has ties to DC too as well. So I mean, it's a very well-rounded season. There's chefs from all over the country. Brian Malarkey from San Diego. There's Nene Nugent from New York. I mean, there's chefs from all over, and all seasons really of Top Chef. Majority of them are all represented.
Awesome. Now, remind us of in case our listeners might have missed last week. So last week was the season premiere, episode 1.
Yes.
What sort of what was the quick fire challenge and the elimination challenge? Because you made it through.
So I made it through, or you wouldn't be talking to me right now. So the quick fire challenge was the classic mise en place challenge, which is I think that's Tom's favorite challenge of all time, where there's 3 different challenges that we had to do. One was turning artichokes, the other one was segmenting oranges, and the last one was cracking almonds. And so it was to divide everybody up in teams. Whoever got first, done first in each one, moved on and got to jump in the car and head to the Top Chef kitchen to start the dishes. So I made it through the artichokes. So I was a part of the first group to head back to the Top Chef kitchen. So it gave us a time advantage. To cook our dishes. We had to present 2 dishes using all of the ingredients. And we did a roasted artichoke dish with a aerated yogurt and sumac, and then we also did a artichoke tortelloni with a brodo. We ended up winning the quickfire, and that was my first quickfire win in Top Chef history, even though I was a part of a team. So I was pretty happy about that. And then we went on to our elimination challenge, which we did a open pit barbecue, cooking a seafood spread and a cohesive menu amongst our teams. And there's 3 people or 3 chefs in each team. And we did that by the ocean, on the beach, and served an amazing table of chefs, including Nancy Silverton and Jonathan Jeremiah Tower, and obviously Gail Padma and Tom Colicchio. Marcus Samuelson was at the table. So there's a lot of heavy hitters. I mean, a lot of amazing chefs in our industry that were there judging the table. Awesome. Did not win that challenge, but I did not go home. So here I am in week 2.
Awesome. And what can we what sort of things are in store in tonight's episode? I mean, the show's airs in a couple hours from now, so our interview isn't going to air before it.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? Here's the thing that I learned, and so this is me back again at Top Chef, and with respect to everybody who's watching, I try not to give away too much, because actually when I won my quickfire challenge last week, actually Bravo put out on Twitter that, hey, Brian got his first quickfire. And I reposted it, and then the West Coast just they annihilated me. Spoiler, I started getting a lot of. I mean, it was all in fun, but everybody was upset. So it's it's obviously every challenge is new. This season that I experienced, it's like nothing I've ever seen before. It's a lot tougher. I can tell you that right now, because the caliber of chef that's in that kitchen altogether. These are all, literally all stars. These are all chefs who, are, doing some pretty amazing things out there in the industry right now, and, have been through these challenges and understand it. So the playing field is super even, and it's literally coming down to grains of salt. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, take me back. We'll have a lot of local listeners that love the Frederick roots.
Right.
Where exactly did you grow up? What high school? I'm a Linganore guy myself, but where did you come up?
Yeah, no. So I grew up in Frederick, Maryland. I went to Thomas Johnson High School. That's where I graduated. And then after that, I ended up going to the Culinary Institute of America. I first started cooking in Frederick. I worked at the Francis Scott Key Holiday Inn. That's where I got my first cook job. But then I decided to go to the Culinary Institute of America in Hyde Park, New York. Lived in New York City for about 7 years, working for Charlie Palmer. After that, came back to the D.C. area, opened Charlie Palmer Steak for him. And then in 2008, I opened Volt. And right in downtown. So I always knew, I think I was going to come home and open this restaurant. I actually did a project at the Culinary Institute of America that, where you build a restaurant on paper, and it was all about a restaurant in Old Brownstone in downtown Frederick. And I opened it 10 years after I graduated.
Wow.
And then, I think it was 2008 when the restaurant opened, and then 2009, I left and went to go compete on Top Chef for the first time. And obviously from there, we've been able to do some pretty, incredible things. I work a lot with No Kid Hungry, which is, a big deal right now, obviously, because there's a lot of people that, are out of school, and they're a huge support of those programs, even though the county is doing a great job. But, No Kid Hungry connects kids to meals, and sort of bridges those gaps, especially during the summertime. So I've been fortunate to work with them for years and raise money that impacts, people right here in Frederick, in Frederick County, but also in all the surrounding DC metro area.
That's a really big. When you were a kid, were you always interested in food, or were you peering over your parents' shoulders, cooking, or how do you actually get bit by the bug, as they say?
Yeah, no, my entire family, I think everybody cooked. My grandparents, my mother for sure. She cooked mom food. It was all, pretty amazing stuff. But we always had dinner at 5:30 no matter what. Like that was, sports, crazy schedules, a family of 3 children. She always made sure that we had from scratch meals. We had our occasional pizza nights just like everybody else, but food was a big part of our growing up. We lived in Frederick. We had a garden out back. So I think that just the exposure to just, food means a lot to us all, got me interested. But it wasn't until I was in high school where really I just wanted to be a cook because I was a busboy at first and I didn't really like clearing plates. But I'd rather, I saw fire and knives and, craziness in the kitchen. And I asked the chef, I was like, look, if I take this vocational program in high school, you let me cook. And he said yes. And that's how I got my shot. So I started at 15.
I was a busboy and waiter over at Liberty Road Seafood, so I feel you.
Oh, yeah. You know exactly what I'm talking about. So it just, I don't know. I mean, growing up, it seemed like it was just, for me, it was a lot cooler to be in the kitchen. And so that's the reason why I took the job. And, from there, I fell in love with it, and I just turned it into a career.
That's awesome. What's been the biggest takeaway from running Volt all these years? Like how pleased are you with that? I mean, this is a down institution, and a lot of people when they when Frederick Tourism or any of the local tourism always cite you guys as sort of centerpiece of like a downtown restaurant renaissance. How does that make you feel?
It makes me feel great. I mean, when I set out 12 years ago to open up this restaurant, I thought there was some, fine dining in Frederick, but the experience that we brought to Volt was like something we haven't seen in this region. And so, it was very new, but it was also very, supported by the community. And, it's obviously led to now 12 years of being a part of that. This is the first time I've ever had to close it for an extended period of time. So this is very unique territory for us, but we'll be back. I mean, nobody needs to worry about that. It's just we had to obviously close, due to current climate. But, I look forward to what the next, 10 and 12 years is going to bring for that restaurant. I mean, I think it's always going to be a part of downtown. It's the first restaurant I ever opened, and, it's obviously my flagship and my baby. And so, we wanted to continue to be a part of the community.
For sure, and family too. And then, of course, real quick for our DC listeners, remind us about, you got Voltaggio Brothers Steakhouse down at National Harbor, right? Take us into the idea to expand down there.
Yeah, so, that was an exciting project to be a part of. So we have, we're with MGM, we have Steakhouse, Voltaggio Brothers Steakhouse, right at National Harbor. We also recently, a year ago, opened Estuary, which is with Hilton and Conrad in downtown DC. So those two projects, they're collaborations between both my brother and I. And, as we're starting to, expand our careers and things are changing a little bit, Michael and I have been, opening some things together, even though there was a time where there was some rivalry. Now we've sort of set that aside, and now we're working together on new projects, which has been, extremely exciting. And so obviously, those two restaurants now are also temporarily closed, but they'll reopen soon. We look forward to that. So, hopefully we'll see people in late spring.
Well, final question. Once all of this show is over, if you ever have a free day from all the busyness and craziness of running all these restaurants, what is your ideal meal? I don't want to say favorite food, but you know what I mean? Like if you sit down and you had to choose one, desert island, what would be your meal?
Oh, wow. I had to choose one meal.
That's my favorite movie. I hate it.
No, I know. I mean, for me, it's just, really just a family gathering, family dinner. I mean, I love cooking outside, just a barbecue in the spring is great. But I'm also I'm a big fan of Japanese cuisine. So I love sushi. So I love sort of an over the top experience. There's restaurants all over this region that provide, something like that. I don't know. For me, it always changes, but I think just a good home cooked meal with my family is what I really enjoy. I'm in restaurants, on a daily basis, and so sometimes, what I cook at home is very different than when I cook in the restaurants, and so it's a little bit more comforting. For
sure. Well, hopefully we get some of those outdoor cookouts and barbecues. Get back to that soon after all this stuff dies down. Stay safe. Yeah. Stay, indoors or whatever you got to do, but we keep the good food coming.
Yeah, we'll do. We'll stay safe yourself, and thank you very much for the time. And hopefully you get a chance to watch the episode tonight. Should be a lot of fun.
All right, everybody. Brian Voltaggio, Frederick, Maryland, competing on Top Chef All Stars, airing Thursdays on Bravo. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Take care. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much for joining us on Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Remember to hit the subscribe button and give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time. I wanted to take a second to tell you about an app I really enjoy. Living in the DC area is great, and Podcast DC gathers all of the local shows that I like all in one local app. Health, sports, local news, politics, and so much more. Podcast DC is the new local app with hundreds of DC area podcasts to choose from. I can earn exciting rewards just for listening and share the podcasts I love instantly. Available in the App Store or in Google Play, listen local with Podcast DC.